Hi, this is Jill Menz. I'm news editor at PhocusWire, and we're here in the PhocusWire studio with Jeroen Meerheers of Airbnb. You just got off the main stage with Kevin May, and one of the things you talked about on there was how Airbnb for Work has grown and what you're doing there. My question to you is, what challenges still remain for Airbnb for Work, particularly because business travel, people think of hotels first? How do you kind of change that mindset? What are you kind of doing to build that?
I think what you just described is probably the biggest blocker for us, is changing that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's slowly happening, and the way that we're addressing it is almost from the inside out. So we're starting with the people who are already using Airbnb within the companies, and when we see that reaches a significant amount, we reach out to that company with their stats of saying, hey, did you know that so many people from your company have traveled with us in the past year? Here's how we can make their life a little bit easier, integrate, and so on and so on. And that's been the best strategy for us. So we've seen about 400,000 companies sign up now for Airbnb for Work with a business account, and that continues to grow. So it's a big growth opportunity for us.
Okay. And is the Hotel Tonight acquisition you also talked about on stage, but are you pushing that in business travel in any way at all, or what?
I think there's a lot of synergies, especially with regards to some of the last minute bookings that happen. There's a tendency also for some of the business travelers last minute booking, and then I think some of the offering from Hotel Tonight, there's a lot of positives there for people who book within the 72 hours, for example, prior to checking in, where Hotel Tonight and the hotels that they distribute can help us out.
Yeah, and so that was one acquisition, but then you had another one in Europe with a brand called Lucky. Can you talk a bit about what they do and why that made sense for you guys?
So it's a super interesting sector, I think. Lucky is what we call a host management company, so host management service company. And they basically take up all the work for people who have the space available, and then they do all the hosting services around that. And that is one of the biggest blockers that we've seen for people to say, look, I have the space, but I don't have the time, I'm too far away. That was one of the biggest blockers. So through Lucky and some of the other host management companies, they're not the only ones that we work with.
But they're the only ones you are. They're the only ones you own?
So we've acquired Lucky simply because one, they have a tremendous amount of experience, the right tool set, and we were very impressed with the way that they franchise their business. We believe that is going to create a whole industry of entrepreneurs that can then leverage their tools in order to scale hosting as a service, and that's really why we engaged with them. So we're looking forward to growing that and scaling that across Europe and then in some of the other markets globally as well.
Would you be considering an acquisition in a market like the US or something along those lines, or
So at the moment, we're not looking at further acquisitions in this space, but maybe.
Who knows? The future's open. Okay, I want to switch back to, to the Airbnb Plus, which was launched a little over a year ago.
Yep.
How's that been growing? How's that doing? And then the second part to that question is there room to innovate for Airbnb Plus? Like what are the next steps for, because it's they're verified listings, they're have higher quality services and stuff like that. So
I see a tremendous future for Airbnb Plus. Just the fact that it provides another level of insurance to a guest who's never used Airbnb before. Some of them are business travelers, some are just people who've not used because they don't feel that they can trust Airbnb.
Right.
And this is where Airbnb Plus comes in. We've scaled it in the last year. We've kicked it off with about 1,000 properties. We have about 15,000 properties right now in about 1,000 markets. So we want to continue to scale that, and it's one of the things that we're working on right now is how can we efficiently scale that. So scaling is one thing, how can we efficiently scale that? There's a 50-point checklist that every single host and every single listing has to go through that we want to see is how can we set that up in the best possible way.
So Airbnb has hired a trust officer. What concerns around trust has there been? Is it with regulations? Is it with hosts? What does a chief trust officer intended to do?
Yeah, so trust for us is at the core of the business, right? If there's anything that we have done really well in the past years, it's building the trust to make a business like home sharing globally scalable. And people who don't speak the same language, who don't have the same kind of cultural background, still feeling that they're able to travel together. And I think that's why we have a chief trust officer to make sure that we don't lose that, because it's so core to everything that we do. Is that human connection and the trust that is needed in order for somebody to share their home and in order for somebody to stay in their home. So that's one of the pieces that they're going to tackle.
Okay. The other hire was a global diversity head. What's that role about, and why is that important?
Diversity is something that we take extremely serious. I think, especially in the travel industry, where you're basically in the industry of generating diversity and traveling from one place to another. I think we can take a lead role there. It's something that we have both on our platform or within our employee base. We've made a lot of progress, and I'm looking forward to Melissa right now leading the strategy of what we do within our community, and how do we continue to evolve there in order to make sure that we have the broadest, most diverse host and guest base available, and the same thing for our employee base.
What advice would you give to a company that perhaps wants to get more involved in a diversity initiative? You know, so a lot of small companies don't necessarily have the resources. What are some simple steps maybe that a company could take to really care about diversity?
It's a really good question. I think what we've done in order to kick it off is really understand what is diversity about, because it means something different in every single market. And it's not obvious all of the time. So there's some very obvious gender and so on diversity, but a lot of the other are a lot more local, a lot more culturally biased there. And that's the first one. And second thing is have a very clear picture of where you are right now and where you want to be. So if you have goals, people usually have a lot more a bias to action in order to tackle it. And I think if you're able to put those two on the table, I think you made a big step forward.
Great. So I want to end this with, Kevin brought it up on stage, but I don't think you got to it. Something about your cure for jet lag, or do you have an expert? I'm
lucky enough that I don't suffer jet lag too much, and I travel to the US almost every month.
So what's your secret?
What I try to do is it's not a secret. You switch as soon as possible, drink a lot of water, and then I usually, whenever I go to San Francisco, I go for a run right after I land.
Exercise, the cure-all.
Exercise, get the sunlight in. That's my secret.
That's your secret?
Marks.
Okay, great. All right, well that's it. So,
cool. Thank you.
Thank you.